Hello, good afternoon, students. I am Dr. Josephine Brew-Daniels, a lecturer with the Department of Communication Studies. This afternoon, I will be speaking to the topic Conventions of Usage. And under Conventions of Usage, I will be looking specifically at punctuation or punctuation marks. We want to look at the use of the punctuation marks. This is an outline I will be using throughout the presentation. I'll be looking at the introduction to the topic, the meaning of punctuation marks, examples of punctuation marks, uses of punctuation marks, class exercises on applying punctuation marks to blank text, conclusion, and references. Again, when you look at the bigger topic, conventions of usage, there are a number of topics that fall under them. Such topics are concord or subject-verb agreements, spelling of words, sequence of tense, and punctuation marks is one of them. When we consider conventions of usage, two main things come to play, and these are conventions and usage. We cannot tell about the origin of conventions, but conventions, as we know, deals with observing some laid down norms. As we observe these norms, we find that life becomes enjoyable and trouble-free. If we take observing COVID-19 protocols, for example, you will find that in a way you are enjoying some benefits which make your life enjoyable. In the first place, you are observing a rule set by the country, and also you are protecting yourself from being infected with a deadly disease, COVID-19. We want to transfer the same knowledge of conventions to our language usage. It will therefore mean that if we observe some governed rules in the language, we stand the chance of speaking and writing English correctly. If to speak or in the course of speaking, if the speaker wants to stop, there's a way the speaker can lower his or her voice to stop. Other times too, we can find that a speaker can raise his voice to indicate a punctuation mark, which is, we don't see the punctuation mark, but it tells us that there is something going on in the speech. But when it comes to writing, it is very difficult to identify the kind of voice modulation in our write-up, and for that matter, punctuation marks can be used perfectly to serve that purpose for our written language. If we say punctuation marks, what exactly are we referring to? We want to take punctuation marks to the symbols we attach to sentences to make them meaningful. These are symbols, and that these symbols are meaningful in themselves. As we apply them to our sentences become readable and at the same time meaningful. Examples of such symbols are the use of capital letters, and we refer to it as capitalization. The full stop is there, the comma, the apostrophe, we have the question mark, we have inverted commas or quotation marks, we have the colon, semicolon, hyphen, dash, parenthesis, exclamatory mark, or point. Now you can find that I have placed each of the symbols in the bracket alongside the symbol. So if you take the full stop, for example, you can find that there's a bracket which indicates the symbol for full stop. For comma, in the bracket, you can find the comma there. The apostrophe symbol is also found in the bracket, and the rest follow like that. We want to look at the uses of some of these punctuation marks, and I'll begin with capitalization. That is the use of capital letters to begin a sentence. Now, in English language, anytime you begin a sentence or you write a sentence, you need to begin that sentence with a capital letter. Okay? If, for example, we have the sentence, they left the house without my knowledge, you can find that this sentence is not capitalized. And so we need to capitalize the T of the day. The small letter T, as you find on the slide there, should be capitalized. And so we're going to get the capital T beginning the day. So the correct sentence will be, they left the house without my knowledge. Again, the capital letter is used to begin a proper noun, whether it is found at sentence initial, medial, or final position. What we mean here is that if we are dealing with proper nouns, and a proper noun is the name of unique entities such as names of people, places, towns, institutions, days in the week, months in a year, regions, mountains, religious sects, holidays, etc. Anytime you mention your name and anytime you are writing your name, you can't write your name with a small letter. It should begin with a capital letter. Whether your name is occurring at the initial position of the sentence, as we find in the sentence 1, Daniel is one of my students, you can find that the D of Daniel is capitalized. Then it is telling you also that Daniel is placed at the initial position of the sentence. So we capitalize that one. Let us look at example 2. I met Daniel last week. Now, Daniel, which is the proper noun, is found in the medial position of the sentence. I mean, the middle position of the sentence. We cannot say that because it is occurring at the middle position of the sentence, we will use a small letter. No, because it's a proper noun, it will begin with a capital letter. Look at example 3. They spoke to Daniel. Daniel is found at the final position of the sentence, yet you can find that it begins with a capital letter. So anytime you write a proper noun, or you place a proper noun at the initial position, medial position, or final position, that you begin with a capital letter. Let me quickly read the examples 4, 5, 6, 7 to you. I met the Christians preaching the gospel on the street. You can find that Christian is a name of a religious sect, and it is the only religion which has that name, and so it's a proper noun. So under no circumstance can we write Christians or Christmas with a small letter. It needs to be capitalized. That is why the C of Christians is capitalized. And you can find that in this sentence, Christians is found in the middle of the sentence, yet it is capitalized. Look at example 5. If you are born a Muslim, then it means you are not a Christian, but a Muslim. This also tells you that Muslim is the name of a religious sect, and it is the only religion which has that name, and for that matter, it should begin with a capital letter. So under no circumstance can we begin a Muslim with a small letter. It should always be capitalized. There are people who are born on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. In any of the days in the week as I have selected for my sentence, you can find that each begins with a capital letter. So anytime you are using a proper noun, ensure that regardless the position of the proper noun in the sentence, that proper noun should be capitalized. Now let us look at some uses of the comma. The comma, as we know, is the most versatile punctuation mark, and it tells the reader to pause. But this kind of pause that we are referring to is smaller than that of the full stop. This one will be a shorter pause, right? And it has quite a number of uses. I'll be speaking to some of its uses and will leave the rest in your hands to look for their various uses. We can use the comma as a conventional sign in the following, right? We can use them in dates, and if we are using the comma in dates, all that we are doing to it is that we are using the comma to separate the year from the month. As in the examples that we have here, 6th March, you can find that the comma is placed there, 1957. It tells you that the comma is separating the month from the year, right? Alternatively, you can find that where we want to bring the day in the month after the month, like March 7, the comma is equally crucial. You need to bring a comma after the day to separate it from the year. I hope you are following the discussions. Now look at the comma used in places too. We can use the comma to separate larger geographical landmarks. For example, I want to write Accra, Tamale, Northern Region, Ghana, Central Region. I cannot decide to put all of these together. It will even be difficult for you to read. Don't you think so? I guess you are getting me right. And so if I use the comma to separate each of the regions, it makes the reading readable. It makes you to understand what I am referring to instead of putting all the regions together. It will even be very difficult to know which of the regions I'm referring to. So the comma has a work to do here too. Then we can also think about using the comma to separate all numbers, or let me say figures. Those in accounting will prefer using the figures, except those used for the purpose of identification, like street numbers. Now, when you see the name of some street numbers, you see maybe they put all the figures together: 425, 129, 367, just to tell you that that is the name of the street, and that one doesn't call for the use of any comma there, right? Then look at the years: 1954, 1921, 1990, 1921, 1985. They don't call for any comma separating the years. Look at our telephone numbers too. We don't need any comma to separate any telephone number, but when it comes to putting a number of figures, maybe 4 or 5 figures together, it will become easy to read when you place the comma after the first figure and you allow the rest to stand like that. Or the comma can even be placed after the second 2 digits, or even after the third digits, so as to make the reading and interpretation easier. Now, the comma can also be used in inverted names. What do I mean by that? It means that looking at your names, any name that you bear, you know you have the Christian name and then your surname. If you want to change your two names, you want to invert, bring the last name first and bring your first name first, you need a comma to help you do that. So this example, like somebody who is called Grace Alote, if we invert the name, you will find that after Alote, which is the last name which is placed first, we need a comma to separate it from the first name Grace, right? Another example, for read it yourself so that we can make time and look at other uses of the comma. We can use it to separate a title or degree which follows it. So if your name is Theophilus Aqua, and then you have a title, you hold a title called Esquire, you can place the comma in between your name and the title. So the name is separated from the title by the use of a comma. Look at Musa Mohammed, and this person has a PhD. So to separate the title from the name, you can equally use a comma to do that. Now in letters too, when we are writing, what do I mean by in letters? When we are writing letters to our friends, our siblings, or our parents, we write letters. And we have our salutations and subscriptions in the letter. The salutation constitutes the opening. You may want to say, "Dear Sir," or "Dear Madam," or whatever. After that, there's the need for, after the name, you need to place a comma there. And when you are subscribing a letter to, if you mention expressions like "yours ever," "yours faithfully," "yours sincerely," you still need a comma there to separate the expression from your name. The comma is also used to separate items in list of words, phrases, or clauses. Look at how we have used the comma in this sentence. The carpenter bought a saw, a hammer, a chisel. You see, the comma is separating the list of words there, except when you get to the last word, you don't put a comma there. Where the end is, there is no comma there. You will find in some other readings that some books, some writers will put a comma there before the end. Yes, that type of writing constitutes American writing. We are not doing American writing here. We are interested in British English. And so we wouldn't need any comma placed after the last item. Just, where you are joining the last item, the last two items, there's no need for the use of a comma. We are saying we can use a comma to join words, then phrases as well. Look at this, or clauses. If you attend lectures regularly, that's a clause. Submit assignments punctually, another one is there. And study hard, you see the comma is separating the clauses too, right? A full sentence, maybe in one sentence we have about 3 clauses. You can use the comma to separate each of the clauses. So that is another use of the comma. The comma can equally be used to separate a sentence which has 2 clauses. If I say a clause, I hope you understand. We are referring to a sentence with a subject and then a predicate component, right? A sentence with a subject component and a predicate component. So look at the examples we have below. We are saying that we can use the comma to separate a sentence which has two clauses, and the first clause begins with if or. It can even be an adverbial phrase or a clause. Let's test with the examples. If it rains, you see that is a clause. We shall not attend lectures. So you need to separate the first part of the clause from the second one by the use of a comma. Before you leave, ensure that everyone has submitted their assignment. So before you leave, part of the sentence, separate it with a comma. Last year, comma, there was a problem with the laptop. So take note of these things, instances where we put the comma and we continue with the other part of the sentence, mostly in prepositional phrases. In the morning, we shall see them. In the morning, there needs to be a comma, right? So the comma is there. In 1957, Ghana obtained independence. That's not alone. On Monday, we'll be having our first general quiz. So on Monday, there should be a comma after on Monday because it's a prepositional phrase and it is introducing the sentence. And so you need to use a comma to separate the prepositional phrase from the rest of the sentence, as you find them in examples 4 and 5. And even in my family, everybody wants more. You cannot leave the in my family and everybody wants more to stand without a comma. There is the need for a comma separating the prepositional phrase from that of the rest of the sentence. Look at another one. Upon hearing the death of his father, he was found in a confused state. So upon hearing the death of his father, you need a comma placed there. Then the comma can also be placed after a subordinate clause if it begins a sentence. Look at the following examples. When it rains, stay at home. This is a subordinate clause. When it rains, it's a subordinate clause because it is introduced by a subordinate conjunction. When it rains, stay at home. Since education is free in Ghana, I don't see why a child of school-going age should stay out of school. So since education is free in Ghana is a subordinate clause. So you separate that one from the main clause of the sentence. The main clause that is not introduced by any subordinate clause. Where we have the subordinate clause leading the sentence, there is a need for you to use the comma to separate that from the main clause. Although the school has admitted many students, most of its infrastructures are old. Now look at the seventh use of the comma. The comma is used after a non-finite or verbless clause which begins a sentence, as we find in the following. To make a good class, there should be a comma. The students must work hard all the time. Having plowed their fields early. So you can see that if we have the to plus the verb of a sentence beginning a main sentence, you need to place a comma after it before the main sentence continues. Or if you have the non-finite clause, in fact the non-finite clauses, we have different types. For example, you have the verb beginning the sentence and there's an ing after the verb. The verb begins the sentence. There is an ing after the verb. And it constitutes the first part of the sentence. You find that it doesn't have a subject. The first part of the sentence doesn't have a subject on its own. But the second part is a finite clause. If you have such instances, you need to use the comma to separate the non-finite clause from the finite clause. Now look at the other example, taken by surprise. you see that there's a verb plus ing beginning the sentence, taken by surprise, and it constitutes part of the sentence. Use a comma to separate that part of the sentence from the finite clause, which has the subject and all the other components of the sentence, the predicate aspect. The thief was arrested by the police. So take note of that. Now let's look at a very important point here about the uses of the comma. The eighth use is equally something that I should draw your attention to. It is used before and after non-defining restrictive clause or a phrase in a position which offers extra information about the noun, technically called antecedent, that follows it. Now, all the sentences I've captured there mean that if you mention somebody's name, and you want to explain the person's name further, right? That somebody should not be a common thing. It should be a unique entity. Maybe he's the only one who has that quality, like the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo. Then I mentioned the president of Ghana. I need to use commas to separate the Nana Akufo-Addo from the president of Ghana before I add the rest of the sentence. So look at these examples. Professor Obin, who has just returned from Japan. So it means it is giving us extra information about Professor Obin. And so we need to use commas to separate them. The first part, so after then you mention that unique item, like we saw in the case of proper nouns. That unique item, after the additional information which is provided, right? Ensure that you place another comma there. And then you add the rest of the sentence. So Professor Obin, who has just returned from Japan, will attend the matriculation ceremony next Saturday. We can get it. Professor Obin, the Vice Chancellor of University of Cape Coast, or the former Vice Chancellor of University of Cape Coast, will attend the matriculation ceremony next Saturday. Look at the other example. Cape Coast. You don't end there. You want to say something about Cape Coast. So bring a comma. It is a unique entity. Bring a comma to separate it from what do you want to say about Cape Coast, which was once a national capital. After whatever you want to say about that unique entity, you equally need another comma to separate it from the rest of the sentence. And so we have two commas separating the unique entity from the additional information it is providing about that unique entity. So two commas are used here. Before we continue, has become the seat of a great university. Look at the last one, the Quran, which is the holy book of Muslims. Quran, comma, which is the holy book of Muslims, has been translated into many languages. I have more examples here. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first president of Ghana, built a large number of senior secondary schools for Ghanaians. Look at the another use of the comma. It is placed after words like yes, no, well, if they begin a sentence. So if we say yes, if I have a sentence which begins with yes, no, or well, I need to put a comma to separate them from the rest of the sentence. In the same way, if I'm beginning my sentence with somebody's name, the moment I mention the person's name, I need to place a comma after the person's name before I add the rest of my sentence, as you can find in example XV, X, thereabouts. We are also saying that we can use the comma after a reporting clause to separate it from a quote clause as found in the following. Look at John said. This one, it means that the writer has it in mind quoting some exact words of a speaker. And for that matter, before you quote the exact words of a speaker, you begin with what we call reporting clause, like we find it in John said, he exclaimed, they noted, they remarked, they retorted. All of these are reporting clauses. Anytime you intend to quote somebody and you begin with that reporting clause, immediately you mention the verb in the reporting clause, you need to place a comma there before you start the exact words of the speaker. You put the exact words of the speaker in quotes. So take note of that. If you are not quoting any exact word of the speaker, like maybe you want to say that John said that they would be organizing a party. This one, you know that I am not interested in quoting John's words verbatim. I'm just restructuring it. I'm using the indirect speech. And for that matter, if I'm using the indirect speech, it doesn't call for the use of any comma. That one will go wrong. I will go wrong. And so I will bring the comma only when I am quoting what somebody has said verbatim and I'm using a reporting clause. So after the verb in the reporting clause, I need to bring a comma before I start the exact words of the speaker. You can find that so far we've been looking at maybe two of the punctuation marks, and I have boldly written, I have used the uppercase of the letters of the alphabet to indicate to you what you are supposed to do here. All I expect from you is that you read further. We have provided you with a reference list just placed behind your course outline. We expect that you take one of the books, make your research, and add to the letter I have provided you. And I believe as you do that, you will understand what I have done here better. Because of the nature of the punctuation marks, we have a number of them to speak to. I will pause here and make another audio for other punctuation marks. Else, if I should record all, it will become very difficult for you to record. So be expecting me to give you lectures on the rest of the punctuation marks. So we pause here. Hello, I welcome you back to our series of lectures. As I told you, we'll be looking at more of the punctuation marks. You know, we should learn to use the punctuation mark because as we apply them correctly, we make our sentences meaningful to our readers. Our readers will also enjoy listening to our our readers will enjoy reading whatever we have written for them. So now we turn our attention to the uses of the apostrophe. As you can find, the symbol of the apostrophe is in the brackets, right? I know some of you have been using this apostrophe, but then you have been using it wrongly. Today, let us take an opportunity to learn how the apostrophe can be used in our sentences so that we correct our wrong impressions that we have about this symbol and use it correctly. We use the apostrophe to indicate the possessive case. What do I mean by the possessive case? If I say the possessive case, I am referring to trying to mention something which belongs to somebody. For example, if I have a book and the book belongs to somebody I know the name of, even I don't know the name, let me stick to the examples that I have used here. You can find that a boy owns a book, and I want to say that the book belongs to the boy. How do I write it in English? I will write it by using an apostrophe and S attached to it. And that one will help us to consider some of the uses of the apostrophe. Now, the first use of the apostrophe is that we use it with singular nouns that do not end in S. How should it be used? Such as boy or John, and any of them own something. How do we use it in English? I will just add the apostrophe and S. Listen to it carefully. As you listen to it, you place the apostrophe symbol after that item, apostrophe and S. It is different from S apostrophe. If I say write the S before the apostrophe, it's a different thing I mean. But for now, let us look at it from this angle. We are using the apostrophe and S to indicate that something belongs to somebody who doesn't have a name which ends in S. So a boy, for example, the last word is Y, is not S. And if a boy owns a book, we will simply say a boy's book. Whose book is this? It is the boy's book. We cannot say it is the boy book. No, we'll be wrong there. You see, when conventions come to play, conventions of usage come to play, right? Now look at girl plus pets. I need, a girl is a singular noun. I hope we all know that. And it doesn't end in S. So if something belongs to the girl, how do I express it? I will use the apostrophe and S. I will attach it to the girl, the last word after girl. And so I'll get a girl's purse. Now man too is a singular noun. It doesn't end in S. So if I want to say that this heart belongs to that man, all that I will do is that I will need my apostrophe and S after the man. So I'll get a man's heart. Martha and pen. Martha's pen, right? We need the apostrophe and then S. So it tells you that when we are dealing with concord, we don't use the apostrophe and S to indicate the singular form of the verb. Please take note. I have seen students committing such a serious mistake in the language. It can never be so. So maybe he teaches English, and then you write he teach, then when you get to the S, you use an apostrophe and S. It is neither here nor there. So please take note and learn something new and apply. Then we can also use the apostrophe with plural nouns that end in S. Where do we put the apostrophe? Maybe we have the plural nouns, the plural form of the noun. They own something. How do we express it? This one, we will put the apostrophe in front of the last S. So look at girls plus dormitory. Where have I put the apostrophe? I have put the apostrophe after the S. So this time it's not apostrophe and S, but you see that the apostrophe is placed after the S. I hope you are opening your eyes widely to see where to place the apostrophe symbols. Now, ladies plus bag. The bag belongs to all ladies. Where do I place my apostrophe? It should be placed after the last S of the word ladies. So other examples follow. Look at officers' mess. Officers, it's a plural noun, and we want to show that the mess belongs to all of them. So all that I will do is that I will place the apostrophe in front of the last S. Nurses station, the same thing. If we don't learn these things where we place them, it will be very difficult for us to apply them correctly. So take note and apply apostrophe correctly. Now we can also use the apostrophe with plural nouns that do not end in S. Where do we place the apostrophe? We have examples like children, women, men, etc. They don't end in S. So what do we do? Just add the apostrophe and S before the thing that they own. So here we have children plus park will give us children's. You can see where my apostrophe is and where my S is. Children's park. Women plus college will give me what? Women's college. Men plus coats will give me what? Men's coats. So that is another use of the apostrophe. Now let us look at instances where we have similar names that already end in S. Where do we place the apostrophe to indicate that they own something? Look at the sentences below. King James plus Bible. The James ends in S. It's one individual's name, James. And then it ends in S. So where do I put the apostrophe? There are two ways of going about it. This one, when we have instances where somebody's name, singular names end in S, where do we put the apostrophe? We have two ways of doing this. Either you add the apostrophe and S as we find in King James's Bible, or you just place the apostrophe in front of the last S of the name. So we have King James's Bible or King James Bible. Now look at Moses and then the law. The law belongs to Moses, one person. How do we say it? Maybe we'll say Moses's law, or we place the apostrophe in front of the last S, right? So we get Moses' law. Then Jesus and disciples. Jesus ends in S, a singular noun which ends in S. And he owns something. How do we do it? We can say Jesus's disciples or Jesus' disciples. Another example, Thomas plus coat. Thomas's coat or what? Thomas' coat. So we are saying that when we are speaking, we can use the apostrophe and S. So when we are speaking, I can say Moses' law or Thomas's quote or Judas's deception, right? But when it comes to writing, we prefer using the one we place the apostrophe in front of the last S. So take note of that. Sometimes if the S form occurs with the inanimate nouns as well, so we can have Ghana's independence, Togo's president, and if we have products too, we can say coffee's flavor, milk's taste, chocolate's color. These are all permissible in the language. So look at what we are doing. It tells you that you cannot put your book down and write and learn English. You need to learn it because the rules are many. And so if you don't learn the rules, how can you observe them? Just consider your mother tongue. Your mother tongue is equally like other languages, like the English language. It has plenty rules that you need to observe. And so if you do not do further studies, read to find out more about the rules that pertain in a language that is not yours and it is used as the official language, you find that always you have a problem with the use of that language. So let's pay attention to what we are doing and try as much as possible to read and practice what we teach you so that you can assimilate or memorize some of the rules in your daily usages or writing. Look at, if it's an organization, we can mention the apostrophe found in organizations as well. So we can have UN's Peace Corps, WHO's decision. We have them in a unit of time to have a day's workshop, a week's holiday, and then personal entities such as Harmattan's dry season, Beauty's perfect, etc. Now we can also use the apostrophe to form plurals of letters. I mean, if you want the plural of letters, numbers, and words, we can use the apostrophe to do that. So, for example, if I want the plurals of A, I only need to bring the apostrophe and S after the A. So I can say that I had 3 A's in my NOVDEC exams. You see, so I'm referring to instances where I had more than 1 A, plural of the, then 2 80s. 2 80s, it means that the 80s are, I'm referring to another one. I have more than, I had 2 80s when I measured the quantities or something like that. Now, if is a word, if you want the plural of if, just put the apostrophe and s to indicate the plural form of if. So we have no ifs. No ifs were used in the sentences. I hope you get it. So the focus is on the if, which is contracted to the if and is. Now let me use this opportunity to talk about the contracted form of it. The it with the apostrophe s means that it is. Students use it wrongly and use its to stand for it is. If you are using its, it means that you are using it in place of something. If I say University of Cape Coast is the only university in Ghana, and I don't want to mention University of Cape Coast again in my sentence, I can say its students are intelligent, right? That is when I will use the its without the apostrophe. Please take note. If I want the contracted form of it is my book, and maybe I don't want to write it is my book, I want the contracted form, I can use the it apostrophe and s and then add it's my book. A similar thing goes with that's my friend, that's my friend, that is my friend, and many others. So all these, the MPs, you see how I've written the plural form of MPs, apostrophe and S, or you can ignore the apostrophe and add just the S to it, just like you find it in 1960s, apostrophe and S, or just add the S without the apostrophe. But you cannot do same to where I have dot your eyes, then you maybe remove the apostrophe and put the s there. It will read as what is, and so it will be wrong. I'm just drawing your attention to instances where we can ignore the apostrophe in years, and then in words like the MPs, the shortened form of members of parliament. That is the only, for now, these are the examples I have. But when it comes to dot your eyes, the plural of I, you cannot ignore the apostrophe and add the S. Otherwise, you're going to have dot your S and write your case clearly. K2, plural of K, a number of K, you can use K and the contracted, the apostrophe S. So the apostrophe is used to indicate contraction. If we say contraction, it means that we want to delete some of the letters in some words, and we can achieve that by using the apostrophe. So let us look at an example like ever. I don't want all the letters to appear. I want to delete some of them. I can delete the V and replace that one with the apostrophe. So it reads a. Look at he is. He is. If I contract it, if I want to remove some of the letters, I will just remove the I and replace that one with the apostrophe S. We will read will. I shall or I will be what? I and then I'll. We are or we were will read like were. We have contracted some of the words. Then I am. Please, this is a subject and a verb. When you want the contracted form, you can write it just like the I apostrophe am. And that is the contracted form of what? I am. So mostly students write I'm good with the am and then they add the good. Where is your subject? If you do that, it means that you are ignoring your subject. And for that matter, the sentence that you want to write, you end up not writing a sentence. I'm good is not a sentence. It's not a sentence because the subject element is not seen. If we want, so let us stop writing the I'm good that we have been using on WhatsApp message. If it's the contracted form that you want, I want you to change your style of writing from the am and then use the I apostrophe am and then you add the good. In that one, it is a sentence. You have a subject in your sentence and then the predicate component of the sentence. Now look at 1980. I've contracted it. I've deleted the 19 there and I've used the apostrophe there to indicate the 80. It's not a good style anyway, because how about if we pass, if we are no longer using the 19s and we are using the 20s, how do I know? So that won't be a good example anyway. The apostrophe is used in time modifiers as found below. A week's stay, a year's steady leave, a day's, etc. But then look at this issue closely. The apostrophe is omitted in adjective noun combinations that are names of organization or places. What do we mean here? We mean that look at these names of unions that we have here. Students union. Maybe we want to say that the union belongs to students, and so we're expecting an apostrophe in front of the S. We are saying that if there is a noun, adjective noun, so now the student here is no longer considered as a noun. It becomes an adjective qualifying the noun union, and so we no longer use the apostrophe in front of the last S. Ghana Registered Nurses Association, we need not put any apostrophe after the S, right? Accra Girls Senior High School, Wesley Girls, some would want to do, allow them to do, but we are told that we can ignore them. Boys Brigade, for example, everybody would expect that we'll put an apostrophe after the S. But here we are maintaining it because we are using the boys as an adjective there and then the brigade as a noun. And so if it's boys or girls brigade, it doesn't call for the use of the apostrophe placed in front of it. Once again, we have come to the end of the uses of the apostrophe. Let us remember to use the apostrophe correctly. If we put this note down and we just move about our daily norms, routines without reading to learn how the apostrophe is used, we may forget. So let us do our best to read over, try our hands on some exercises to help us familiarize ourselves with the use of the apostrophe. I would want to end here on the uses of the apostrophe, but in a jiffy, I would start with another punctuation mark. So expect more. Bye bye for now. Hello, students. Welcome back to our series of lectures. We want to continue looking at our punctuation marks. In this lecture series, I want to look at the quotation marks or inverted commas and some of its uses. We can find that the quotation mark may be single, as you find in the brackets, or double. And we use it to enclose the exact words of a speaker. If you want to report what somebody has said exactly, we put them in quotation mark. I mean, we put the exact words of the speaker in quotation marks. Either you use the single to open, that is to open the speech. I mean, beginning from where the person started speaking, and then you use the single to close, to end the speech of the exact speaker. So you can find that we have the single quotation mark or the double quotation mark. We can use, and the first of the quotation mark is called the opening quotation mark, and then the one we use to close it is called the closing quotation mark. In the same way, the double quotation is the opening quotation mark, and the one at the end is the closing quotation mark. So if we are reporting what somebody has said verbatim, or we are using the reporting speech by quoting the exact words of the speaker, the moment you begin the exact words of the speaker, you apply either the single quotes or the double quotes, and then you close with the single quote if you started with the single quote, and then you close with the double quote if you started with the double quotation marks. Let's take note. Now, as we want to report what somebody has said, we are guided by certain things. Let's look at some of the things that will guide us to report what somebody has said using the exact words of the speaker. We come across what we call reporting clauses or dialogue guides or explanatory words or words of reporting. All these terminologies are the same. So if we say reporting clauses, it means that what the person wants to use to report what somebody has said. So look at the sentences that I have, the clauses I have captured them below, whether you want to call them reporting clauses or dialogue guides or explanatory words. I've captured some here. When you begin with these ones, then it tells you that you want to report what somebody has said. She said, he said, then you begin, you open with the quotation mark. What did the person say? You start the person's words with the, where you open the quotation with the single quote or the double quote. If you like the single, use it. If you like the double, you use it. We don't want instances where you blend the single and double. No, that one is not permissible here. So think about which one you favor, you like using it, and then you use it. So we can have reporting words, reporting clauses like he or she said, retorted, he retorted, she retorted, he remarked, they asked, they questioned, we ordered, I inquired, I requested, I bantered, etc. When you are using all these things, it is telling us that somebody wants to quote somebody's words exactly. And so after the reporting clause, you have to put a comma, like we saw in the uses of the comma. So your comma becomes mandatory here because you want to report exactly what somebody has said. You don't want to, use the indirect speech. You don't want to use, your own words to report what somebody has said, but then your interest is in using the exact words of the speaker. And so look at the example I have there. He said, there's a comma there after the dialogue guide or the explanatory words or the reporting clause. The comma is there. Then I use the open quotation mark. And in this instance, I have used the double quotation marks. It means that when I am ending, I should equally use the double quotation mark. And don't forget, when you are quoting, the moment you begin the quoting the exact words of the speaker, you need to begin with a capital letter. And so for here to, the sentence begins with what? A capital letter and not a small letter. So I have here, I am no longer interested in the deal. This is somebody's words that I quoted. So after the quote, I put my full stop there and then I close it. So this is one of the uses of the quotation mark. Let's And as we quote or as we use the style of mentioning the reporting clause and adding the quote clause, that sentence, that full stretch will have two parts, right? Our sentence will have that two parts. And if we get the two parts of the sentence, the first part that we use, we call the reporting clause. Where we have the explanatory words or dialogue guides or whatever you want to call them, we call them the reporting clause because that one is helping you to report what somebody has said. And what follows, the exact words of the speaker that you use, is called quote clause. Quote, you are quoting. So that one is termed quote clause. But let us not forget the fact that in dealing with the reporting clause and then the quote clause, they can change positions. It is not always that we will have our sentences starting with a reporting clause and then followed by the quote clause. There are times that they will interchange position. And if they interchange positions, it tells you that this time round the trend will change. The quotation remains unchanged. You begin with your quotation mark as well as your capital letter, but instead of the former one where you're going to put a full stop after the quotation, after the quote clause, here it should be a comma, right? There should be a comma and then you close your quotation, then you add the reporting clause. They have just interchanged position. And so when they interchange position like that, after the reporting clause, please put a full stop there as we find initially said. I hope I have made sense here. Let us continue. Now, there are times that as we make the effort to report what somebody has said, we get interrupted. And if we get interrupted, the reporting clause is what normally interrupts the quote clause. So if it happens like that, it means that we are going to have what we call divided quotation. And in dealing with divided quotation, there's a format. So let us quickly learn that one too and add it to our knowledge. Now look at the A example A. I know the person started talking. The person started quoting somebody's words verbatim. So that's why we have the opening quotation mark there, right? But then this person didn't end and there was an interruption. What is the interruption? It's a reporting clause which interrupted. And so look at how you deal with it. So the first part or the divided quotation, the first quote, which is divided, you open and close it, and you put a comma there, right? Open and close. Then your comma is placed after the first part of the quotation. Then your reporting clause, which interrupted, you put a comma after it. That one, you are not quoting that one. It's not part of the quotes, right? But the rest of the quotes is what? That Mary is a student. And so in that case too, you open the second part of the sentence, the divided quotation. So you open with a quotation mark and then you close it as well. I hope you can see that. And then there's a full stop there. So actually, it should have been, the sentence should have read, I know, my uncle said, I know that Mary is a student, right? So that we will have the reporting clause beginning. But this time it's not like that. The reporting clause has managed to divide the full quotation that we wanted to quote. So if it happens like that, please open and close the first part, bring your comma, and add your reporting clause. Then you open and close the second part. As you are doing that, you need to ensure that if the sentence, the first part of the quotation is not a full sentence, I mean the speaker didn't end the full sentence, and so the part of the sentence can be identified in the second part, it means that the second part, you remember I've told you that when you are quoting somebody's words, you need to begin with a capital letter. But because this one is a continuation of the first part of the sentence, you need not start with a capital letter here. I hope it is clear. So let's look at I know. You know what? The sentence is not complete. The completion is at where we have that Mary is a student. And so if we get it this way, then it means that the first part is not complete. And so when I am opening and closing the second part of the sentence, I need not begin with a capital letter. I hope I have made myself clear. Now look at the second example. It follows the same trend. They need, the man exclaimed. So there's an interruption here by what? A reporting clause, right? To be wary of ideas that are not scientifically proven. Because the second part is a continuation of the first quote, they need, I need not bother myself in beginning with a capital letter in the second part of the sentence. So, the to be wary of ideas that are not scientifically proven is a continuation of the they need. And so, it doesn't call for the use of any capital letter. I hope I'm making sense. But look at the C. There's something different there, right? It's also a divided quotation, but then you find that this one, the first part of the sentence is complete. I can't go. So you open and close, right? Your comma is there as you have been taught. Emanuela said, that's the reporting clause, my homework isn't done. This my homework isn't done, even though it forms part of the the first sentence, you can find that because the first part is complete, we have the ability to begin the second part with a capital letter. I hope I've made that clear to you. Look at the D. Comrades, he said. Comrades, it's complete in itself. So you open and close. You bring your reporting clause, a comma after it. We will fight for our motherland. We open and then we begin with a capital letter. And you should understand why we began with a capital letter. I believe with these, if you read, these are the technicalities about using the quotation marks here and there. I have other uses of the quotation marks here. We want to, that's another use of the quotation mark I want to draw your attention to. We can use it to identify words. Maybe we are writing a sentence and we want to highlight a word. If you want to highlight a word, you can use the double quotation mark to highlight that word. As we find in the examples, the word flame comes from French. The word conflagration comes from Latin. You see, it means that that word that we have highlighted is something that we want people's attention to be drawn to it, or our readers' attention to be focused on it. And for that matter, we need to put that one into quotation marks or inverted commas, right? Sometimes the word may not necessarily be an English word. Maybe you conjured your own, jargon that you want to use, a jargon that you use in your halls of residence that you want to use. You can put the quotation, you can enclose that word in the double quotation marks as well. Then look at this one. They are used to enclose titles of short stories, poems, songs, articles, reports, chapters, etc., but not books. For titles of books, we should do what? Underline. Now, maybe I want to write, and I have a title of a book, title of a story I know, like Anansi and the Wisdom Pot. And I want to write a sentence like, Anansi and the Wisdom Pot is a story I admire so much. Because it's a title of a story, we want you to put the title of the story into quotation marks. In like manner, if it's a title of a poem, we want you to put the title of the poem into quotation marks. If it's a title of a television program that you are watching, for example, Date Rush, and you want to say, Date Rush is the current program telecast by TV3, for example, you can find that you cannot leave Date Rush with your other words in the sentence. You need to use and close the Date Rush in the quotation marks, right? And a title of a chapter in a newspaper too, we need to use the quotation mark to enclose it. If it's a title of an article, A Journey of 1,000 Miles is an article I find interesting. It's an article I find interesting. But let's look at books. A book which was written by Chinua Achebe, for example. Chinua Achebe is the writer. So the title of the book is no longer at ease. If we are writing to distinguish the title of the book from our other words we are using in the sentence, we need to underline the title of the book. Efua Sutherland wrote The Marriage of Ananswa. So if you are writing to distinguish the title of the book from your other words in your sentences, you equally need to underline it. You need not put them into quotation marks. Take note of that. We have a book we call The Gods Are Not to Blame. It's written by Ola Rotimi. It's the title of a book. And so when you are writing, you need to underline the title of the book. However, if you are using the computer, you can just turn all these titles of the books into, you can write them in italics, right, without underlining it. If you are typing, the underlining will be irrelevant here. Just put those titles of books in italics and that will be fine with us. You can find the quotation marks used in bibliography to distinguish the title of a selection or an article from that who as found in some examples. So we can have I believe these ones your lecturers will help you understand better. We are looking at another quotation mark we call the colon. The colon is indicated, the symbol is indicated in the bracket, two dots, right? Two vertical dots. And this has its own uses, quite different from the semicolon. The semicolon has its own symbols. Please take notes and observe them as such. How do we use the colon? It is used before a long list. That is, you want to introduce a number of items, but before them, you need to use the colon. So maybe you wrote your sentence and you got, for example, and you know you're going to list a number of words, books, pens. The colon should be placed after examples before you list, as follows. The colon is there before you list your item. In the following examples, before you list your item, and like that. We can also use it to separate hours and minutes as we find them in lecture begins at 2:30 p.m. Look at the 2. The colon is used to separate the hours from the minutes. I hope you get it. 4:45 p.m. 4 colon is there. These are a few of the colon. So you can learn more of the uses on your own. Now let's look at the semicolon. The semicolon has its symbol there. It performs functions that are quite different from that of the colon. So take note. I have noted that some students wrongly use the semicolon for colon. The semicolon will do a different thing. It will just separate a sentence which has two ideas, two parts, and the first and second part share a kind of relationship. We will use the semicolon instead of the full stop. So look at the example. Swimming is an acquired skill. Acquired skill. It has to be learned. The it there has to be learned is related to the swimming we are talking about. It should be swimming is an acquired skill. The S shouldn't be there. Air traffic delays due to high traffic volume have increased considerably over the last decade. These delays have become a major public issue. You can find that this sentence has two parts. The first and second part share a kind of relationship. We may call the first one maybe a penny and then the second one a kakra. And so we use the semicolon to separate that. Then the semicolon has other uses of the full stop are we have the dash and its uses read and understand the uses. The exclamatory point is with its uses. I have answered some questions for you so they can serve as a guide to you to answer the rest of. Now we have a text, a passage, a full paragraph that you need to place in the necessary punctuation mark. Now read how to answer such a text and try your hands on them. And I believe you will be fine. When you read a text carefully, you will find the necessary punctuation and capitalization marks that you need to put them in. Then you copy out the entire text. As you are copying, you put in the necessary punctuation and capitalization marks to make the text what? Meaningful. You are not supposed to look for spelling or grammatical mistakes in the text. Your focus should be on missing punctuation marks and capitalization marks. After that, you read over your work to ensure that you have not left any of the punctuation or capitalization mark. So we are looking at the conclusion. So soon we have come to the end of this lecture. We have examined the number of punctuation marks and how they are used to project meaning of a piece of writing. We have noted that there is a need to pay heed to capitalization and punctuation marks anytime we are writing. We have also worked on some exercises to help us acquire the requisite skills in application of punctuation marks. I strongly believe that the little input by your lecturers will help you understand and use the punctuation marks appropriately. On that note, I hope to end this lecture and wish you the very best of luck. Thank you for listening to the lecture series. Bye bye.